Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second season of Because I Have Thoughts. This is episode 1. Thank you to everyone who returned, who watched season 1. I truly appreciate your support. I hope you'll stay tuned for this journey as we enter into season 2. I hope you all had a great summer. Maybe you got to travel, spend time with family. Maybe you learned a new skill. I spent my summer reading, see all my books, relaxing, and writing. Most of you know that I'm an educator, so I spend the school year writing and reading curriculum. So in the summertime, I get to read and write creatively. And if you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, you saw my top 3 books that I read this summer. While I read many big books in the summertime, those 3 books really had an impact on how I think, I feel, and even how I live. They changed some of the aspects of my life, and I've chosen to live differently from the books that I read this summer. I also had the opportunity to be featured in 2 online magazines, Voyage ATL and Bold Journey digital magazines. The links for both of those are on my website, drtlcsquared.com. So you can go to the website. There are tabs across the top. Click the tab that says voice, and there'll be links there where you can click on those links, and it'll take you straight to either one of those articles. In both of those interviews, I was asked about the people and the books and the podcasts that influenced my journey. As I leave this summer and transition into another school year, I carry those thoughts with me. I think about the books that I read this summer that left an impression on me, the people that I mentioned in those interviews who left an impression on me. So it really got me wondering, what kind of impression am I leaving on people, especially my students? As the students return to school this semester, what will I do as an educator to offer them an educational experience that is truly impactful to their lives? Yes, I have to teach the curriculum given to me by the school. However, I can also impart life skills that can positively influence how they show up in the world, which brings me to this season's theme. Y'all ready for this? Last season, we talked about a myriad of topics, mostly centered around emotional health, emotional growth, and how that impacts our relationships in our life. I shared my own personal journey towards emotional healing, from my traumatic childhood, toxic relationships, and even some massive grief that I had been experiencing. I gave you so many book recommendations because I love to read, as you all can see from my books behind me. And I try to give you all the necessary tools to positively impact your own emotional journey. Well, this season, I hope to dive more into the conversation about our own personal identity, how we live and exist and relate in the world through our own prescribed identity, who we think we are, how we think we're presenting ourselves to the world, how we think we're interacting in different relationships. We kind of scratched the surface of this in, I think it was episode 2 of last season, when we talked about emotional safety. And I even offered you a book recommendation. It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin. This season will go beyond the surface and really challenge each other to observe and assess, looking back at us in the mirror. That book kind of gets you started. How I got to this. A lot of my research that I've done in my dissertation and different projects that I've done have actually been centered around gender roles, because that is a pet peeve of mine. No, just from my personal experience. And I really felt that God was calling me to kind of dive deeper with that. The biblical principles of it, the cultural influences, the societal influences. Gender roles are a huge component when you think about relationships and how we engage and connect with one another. But they also impact our identity. I mean, we have so many people who ascribe to very traditional gender roles, and they define their identity by those gender roles. So I'm like totally intrigued by all of that. I'm also very interested in human behavior, what makes us do the things that we do, how we make decisions with regards to the habits that we form, the behaviors we subscribe to. In that, I've also considered just our innate personality traits and how those dictate how we show up in the world. I know that's a mouthful and a lot to digest, but we are very complex beings, and I really want to address every different component of who we are so we can truly focus on our identity and how we show up in the world. It's been my experience that a lot of people are unaware of who they truly are, how they impact other people, the decisions that they make, how they live. I think a lot of people do not understand that their normal everyday behavior impacts everybody around them, not just themselves. Even like down to like the food that you eat with regards to maintaining your health and then living long for your relatives. Like, so much of who we are impacts everybody else around us, especially when you think about, like, we live in a digital virtual age where there are just so many images. We're bombarded by so many images of telling us who we should be and how we should live and what's the most appropriate way to live. There's so many rules, right? So I just want us to really kind of pause and really dig deep and figure out who we are and how we identify, how we show up in the world. All right, so let's get started. I used to run a program back in my old job that was really centered around leadership. They brought me in to really help build their leadership program. This program was for people who felt like they were called to leadership, any capacity, whether it is in ministry or traditional work, vocationally, in every type of way. We were supposed to address and give them the skills to be great leaders. So in building this curriculum, I really thought it necessary to focus on good character, because I just feel like you can get leadership skills from anywhere. Like, I got a whole bunch of books on this bookshelf behind me about leadership. I've taught it time and time and time again. I've been to leadership conferences, seminars, classes myself. You can learn leadership anywhere. But what you can't learn from most of those leadership programs is how to develop your character to prepare you for that leadership. So good character is evident in having accountability, honesty, self-control, transparency, and humility, just to name a few traits. So recently I watched an episode of Dear Future Wifey podcast by fellow podcaster Latarius Whitfield. And he featured Jerry and Priscilla Shirer. Most of you know who Priscilla Shirer is. Well, this was an episode with Priscilla Shirer and her husband, Jerry. I love Priscilla Shirer. But I love how they addressed the submission in their relationship, in their marriage. I feel like submission has become a dirty word. It's definitely an area of contention in most relationships. How they expressed it was that submission is easy, or at least manageable, if your partner has accountability to either someone else, of course to Jesus Christ, but someone else in their life, someone to hold them accountable for their own behavior when they're out of line, when they could be unreasonable, and those types of things. Priscilla personally said on that podcast that she can submit easily because she knows her husband has an accountability partner holding him accountable, that he's just not out here wilding out. So, and just a little side note about submission. We're all submitting to someone or something every day. I know a lot of people have a problem with that word, but you're submitting in some capacity every day. You're submitting to your boss. You're submitting to your mother's approval, if you have that. You're submitting to other people's opinions, friends' expectations, societal or cultural pressures, likes on social media. We are all submitting to something or someone. So, just a little side note on submitting that I wanted to give you since I went on that little tangent. Anyway, let's get back on track. Accountability is so key when it comes to having good character. So I just wanted to give that little tidbit, that little side note. If you haven't seen that podcast, check it out. It's on YouTube. Again, it's called Dear Future Wifey, and the podcaster is Latarius Whitfield, and the episode features Jerry and Priscilla Shirer. So how you can gauge or where is the barometer for good character is accountability, humility, transparency, honesty. Those are just to name a few. Lots of people classify themselves as having good character, sometimes even being of great character because they define themselves as a good person. So if you have to tell people that you're a good person, then you may lack some self-awareness. I'm just saying. Which reminds me of a story that Bishop Jakes tells about him and his wife when they first got married. He was saying that he was like walking around the house enforcing, you got to do it because I'm the man. I said so because I'm the man. His wife finally turned to him and said, who are you trying to convince, me or you? I feel that way when people are saying, well, I'm a good person. Who are you trying to convince, me or you? If you have good character and you're a good person, you don't have to say it. It's evident. So that's basically a red flag or a sign that some self-assessing needs to happen with regards to your own personal identity. In developing the curriculum for the program that I was talking about, one of the things I did was have a lot of the participants take personality assessments. I love personality assessments. In the beginning of the program, I think we started with 5, and by the end, I think we had like 7. If any of my students or any of the participants are watching, they're probably either laughing because they remember all of the personality assessments or they're completely traumatized. Anyway, I think personality assessments are essential, finding our true identity and having self-awareness. They may reveal to us things about ourselves that we weren't aware of, blind spots that we may have, areas of growth that we could work on. I just think that they're so important. If you have never taken a personality assessment, I strongly suggest you do. If you don't know what they are, if you ever heard of Myers-Briggs, that's the most common one, but there are so many more out there. It may not be 100% accurate based on your own perception of you, but I assure you that the results will reveal something about you that you may not have known or may not been aware of your personality, or it may reveal how someone has experienced you and they probably communicated that to you. And in that moment, you denied it. And that personality assessment is like, no, that's you. Nevertheless, it is important to self-assess, and personality assessments give you the opportunity to do that. There are tons of people that are in opposition of personality assessments. I feel like those are the people that really need to take them the most, because either they know that there are things that they need to change and they're unwilling to, or they don't want to face that there are things that they need to change. But what's that cliche? Ignorance is bliss. Curriculum challenged the participants to really see themselves and how they show up in the world and how people experience them. Because for me, I was like, you can't lead anybody else until you can lead yourself. And the best way you can lead yourself is to know yourself. And how do you do that? Is gain self-awareness and build your character. Now, I know you're wondering why I'm telling you all of this is because a lack of self-awareness can contribute to many different challenges. Identity starts and stops with self-awareness. How we impact others, how we show up in the world, what our legacy will be when we leave. And so many of us have a distorted perception of who we are, how we present ourselves, how we show up in the world, and how we impact other people. We see ourselves one way and people experience us a completely different way. It's like one of those cases where 10 people are like, you can be abrasive. And you're like, I'm the nicest, kindest person on the planet. Well, 10 people, that's a lot of people saying the same thing. I'm just saying. But anyway, I just wanted to kick off this season with us examining ourselves and digging a little deeper and gaining a more honest perception of ourselves. I recognize that everybody does not have access to personality assessments. I will actually put the personality assessments that I used. Actually, I'll put them on my website. I was going to say I will put them in the description of each episode, but I think I'm going to put them on my website. So then you guys can just go to the website, click on the links, and if you want to do them, you can do them. Some of them are pretty expensive, but if you are interested in doing them, I will give you the links so you can do them. But if that is not within your budget, which I respect because inflation is killing us all, sweet Jesus. There are simple things that you can do in your life to some assessments that isn't necessarily, the 200 questions of a personality assessment. One thing you can do is ask yourself key questions throughout your life, throughout your day. I like to keep a journal. I think I've mentioned that several times on here, is that I journal a lot. I have boxes and boxes and boxes of journal. I told my son when I die, that's going to be a gold mine. He should just publish them all. But anyway, you should be asking yourself key questions. This is a way to assess your own personality and your own identity. One question you can ask yourself is, why do I feel this way? So you're in a situation, you're in a scenario, you're responding in a way that may be uncomfortable. You may feel like it's unlike you. Ask yourself the question, why do I feel this way? Another question you can ask yourself is, why do I do this way? And when I say that, you fill in the blank. Fill in the blank. There are so many traditions, rituals, habits, behaviors that we take on, and we have no idea where they came from. I remember a teacher telling me one time, telling our class a story about how a family was making this meatloaf, and every generation cut the edges off of the meatloaf before they served it. And then the most recent generation, one of the younger grandkids was like, why don't we eat the ends of the meatloaf? And her mother was like, oh, because great grandma did it. And then the grandma was like, no, I did it because my grandma did it. And then that grandma was like, oh, no, I did it because my grandmother did it. So we're talking like 4 generations of them just cutting off the ends of the meatloaf. So then maybe like a great, great, great uncle comes into the conversation and they ask him why they were cutting off the ends of the meatloaf. And he said, oh, because the pan was too small. That is the funniest story to me because, and y'all might think I'm corny, but I think it's hilarious because I'm like, we do so many ridiculous things that was passed down through generations, that was probably done for necessity back then. And now we don't have to do it, but we still do it and it makes no sense. So asking yourself, why do I do this the way that I do it, makes you start to think, oh, am I doing this because I want to? Or am I doing this because I was conditioned to do it? How do I really want to do it? Asking yourself questions really taps into who you are as a person, and you can get in touch with your true identity. Another key question you can ask yourself is, when did I start feeling this way about this? Whatever the scenario is. Start asking yourself questions, or ask yourself, how does this make me feel? Is this the desired feeling that I want out of this scenario? We don't stop to assess ourselves in so many scenarios, whether it's frustrating, whether even if it's happy times. I know some people who just don't have the ability to be happy. They need to complain about everything. They need to point out the negative. And I'm just like, why? Why do you need to be that way? Did you ask yourself that? Or are you even aware that you can be extremely negative and only have negative things to say? There's always a positive side. A negative can't exist without a positive. So you can focus on the positive instead of on the negative by asking yourself the questions in the moment. And I don't mean audibly. Ask yourself inside. You don't need to have a conversation with yourself in a crowded room and then people think you're crazy. But you can have an internal conversation with yourself. I usually assess myself internally, and then later on that night or maybe the next morning, I will journal about it. Like, I was at an event, this girl had a conversation with me, and I began to feel uncomfortable. Why did I feel uncomfortable about that topic? And then I assess my feelings and what I was thinking and feeling in those moments to get a better understanding of me. I hope that you guys will do the same. So I'll put the questions in the description in the episode description for you guys to review. You saw them up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, but if you're listening on Spotify, you can see them in the description of this episode. I'll put those questions. If you just start with those minor questions and start asking yourself those questions, it'll give you an idea of who you are and give you better understanding of your identity, and maybe you'll gain some more self-awareness. I'm just saying, try it. And I will say that these questions are best answered when dealing with conflict or discomfort, because those are usually the areas that we aren't familiar with ourselves and don't know how we respond. The common mistake is anger, where we respond in anger to most things, but anger can manifest itself, and it can actually be sadness. It could be confusion. It could be nervousness. It could be ignorance. Anger manifests itself in so many ways, or it presents itself in so many ways, but is actually just a surface emotion that covers up real deep emotions about something. So ask those questions usually when you're in an uncomfortable situation or if you're in conflict, to gain clarity who you are and try to know your most genuine self. Maybe this week, as you think about this episode, you will start to ask the people in your life how they truly experience you. And when you're asking those questions, actually listen, you guys. Really sit and listen. Let them talk. Don't interrupt. You can take notes. I will ask the person, do you mind if I take notes while you're telling me this? Because I really want to grow and change. I really want to refer back to those notes and be like, oh, wow, that's how you experienced me. That's not my intent. So if you have people that are close to you, whether it's your spouse, your children, parents, friends, whomever, sit down, have a conversation with them and ask them how they experience you. Because we have the most glorified perception of who we are, but who we really are is flawed human beings. We're all flawed. We all have imperfections. We all have areas where we can grow. We all have blind spots. So maybe take some time and sit down with someone that's closest to you and have that conversation. Ask them some questions on how they experience you and how they identify you. How do they feel like you show up in your life? Hopefully this will spark genuine conversations and genuine connection with the people closest to you. It'll help you foster more meaningful relationships, more enjoyable relationships. I feel like when I have conversations with people, and I mentor and disciple a lot of people come to me for advice in their personal lives. And usually, I was just telling someone the other day, the top two topics that I hear is money and relationships, money and relationships, money and relationships. And I feel like usually my first question is like, did you have a conversation with them? And they're like, no. And I'm like, that's where you should have started. It just seems so simple. And hey, I'm not laughing because I have perfected it. I'm laughing because there are billions of people on this planet and we all seem to have the same problems. And if we all just took the time, things could be better. That's all I'm saying. That's why it's hilarious to me. But anyway, I really, really hope that if you sit down and ask these questions to yourself and then have meaningful conversations with people who are closest to you, we can cultivate better relationships, more enjoyable relationships, not relationships that you just tolerate because you're related to one another. I've even had someone tell me, oh, I don't have family, I have relatives. And I was like, well, what's the difference? And they're like, family show up for you, they support you. They are in good relationship with you. They're like, relatives are just biologically related to you. I was like, that's actually a good point, but very unhealthy. And hey, I am not sitting in my ivory tower preaching like I got it worked out, because I have conflict with family members as well. I'm just saying that conversations can be had, to be honest, and we can cultivate better relationships by assessing ourselves and getting to know ourselves better, having more self-awareness, and understanding our own personal identities. And maybe this will reveal some blind spots that you have in your own personality. It did for me. So Let's kick off season 2 by getting to know ourselves. That's your assignment for this week. Look at me giving out assignments. You don't have to do it, but I hope that you will. These are things that have helped me, and I hope that they will help you. I hope that you've gained some tools from this episode. I hope you will take some of the tools and skills and exercises that I've communicated back with you into your real life and apply them. If you're intrigued enough to stay and come back and watch more episodes as we go through this journey of finding our identities and having more self-awareness. Thank you for tuning in today. I truly appreciate it. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, and please share it with other people. Please follow, please subscribe. It matters, you guys. Those numbers impact other things of importance. Numbers matter. They matter to YouTube, they matter to Spotify. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you so much for listening in. I feel like time is the rarest commodity that we have, and you've shared some of your time with me, so I truly appreciate it. Thank you. Well, hopefully, this will spark genuine conversation this week. I would love that for you. And be able to foster meaningful relationships with the people that are closest to you, meaningful and enjoyable relationships with the people closest to you. Let's kick off season 2 by getting to know ourselves and diving deeper into our identity and how we show up in the world. I'm Dr. T. Thank you for tuning in for the second season of Because I Have Thoughts. I hope you have a great week. See you next time. Peace.